we've had a really successful 2 years, and we couldn't have done it without you. What we're going to do tonight, and I'm going to just show you a few little videos rather than me talk for too long, around some of our projects out in the field, and so you can hear from some of the people running those projects, and you can see that how the funds that you've helped and your support has really helped us and has helped the projects in the field. The exception of that is our project out in our partner out in Kenya, which is Old Pejeta Conservancy. Richard Vine, the CEO, is actually here in person this evening and not on a video link, so Richard is going to say a few words in person as well. And I guess the second biggest thank you is to Cornflake for hosting this evening, and Philip at the back has been doing a grand job at serving everybody drinks. Thank you, Philip. Cornflake are a great supporter of ours. I mean, this is a great facility, isn't it? And they give us this, they've got a boardroom upstairs, and they let us use this office space whenever we need to have meetings in town. But some of you know we're not actually based in London, we're based not far off the Brighton coast in Sussex. So having somewhere like this that we can host and have meetings is fantastic. Not only that, Cornflake are completely sponsored this evening, so all the funds that you guys raised isn't going to pay for somebody's wine this evening. That really has gone to the project. This is Cornflake here, and actually I have something, Philip, if you'd like to come in between your serving of wine. As if you're not seen enough, Philip, I have a bottle of wine. Thank you very much. I mentioned Richard just now, but thank you so much to Richard for coming over. Richard really is on a flying visit to the UK, and when I asked if he would be arranged around to come and talk this evening, the only slot we could find was this evening that was earmarked for him to go and spend with his family. So he's very kindly given up some of that time to come and talk to us this evening, so thank you, Richard. And two people, we've got a team of volunteers who do so much to help us, but two people particular for this evening. Liz, I don't know, is Liz still upstairs?
She is.
Liz, come down! Someone shout Liz and come down. While I wait for Liz, the other person to thank is Jill on our team, who's around somewhere. Hopefully you've all seen you all got a thank you card. It was Jill's task and job to write in hand all of the messages in those thank you cards, so thank you, Jill. And Liz has actually come on board for Helping Rhinos recently, and she has been an absolute star in pulling together all the responses, who's coming, who's not coming, and we wouldn't be quite here without her. One other person to mention, because there's a bit of a story behind this. One thing we often get asked is, how can I help and how can I make a difference? And everybody can help and everybody can make a difference in one way or another. And one person here tonight is Sarah. Sarah Hopton-Ramsey. Do you want to give a wave, Sarah? Sarah, Sarah actually was on just a holiday trip, wasn't it? Holiday trip to Kareka Game Reserve in Eastern Cape of South Africa that you'll see in a moment. I got chatting to her ranger and asked how she could help, and I can't really do much at all. It turns out that Sarah makes jewellery. So Sarah has launched the Rhino Tears line of jewellery, which is on display behind you. And part of the proceeds and profits from the sale of Rhino Tears, Sarah donates to a couple of charities, and Helping Rhinos being one of those. Tonight is not a fundraising event. Tonight is a thank you for coming, but the only thing we're selling is Sarah's Rhino Tears. So if you please do go and have a look at them. Everyone has got them. There's quite a few people wearing them already tonight, so you can see them there. You can see a few people wearing them, but please do go have a look, and please buy one. They're brilliant Christmas presents. There's earrings and there's necklaces. Okay, before I talk too much, I'm going to show you a little video, which is, I guess, it was filmed at Kareka Game Reserve, and tells you a little bit around the history of where Helping Rhinos came from a number of years ago, how it got started, and then we'll go on and talk a bit more around there.
I'm Simon Jones, the founder of Helping Rhinos, and I'm here at Kareka Game Reserve in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. I was here for 6 weeks in 2010, and then in 2012, on the 2nd of March, 3 rhinos were poached. One bull was dead when we found him in the morning, and the other bull, Temba, survived for 24 days before succumbing to his injuries. But Tandy, the cow, did survive, and over my shoulder here is Tandy. It's incredible to see that when we found her in the pools of blood that she could actually go on and survive. And even more of a miracle is that Tandy's had 2 calves, Colin and Tembi. And over my shoulder here is Tembi, and then little Colin, who's just a few months old, is next to Tandy.
And here there's been this amazing story of a rhino that has lived against all odds, survived the brutality of poaching, the pain and the suffering that many rhino go through but succumb. She has survived that, and she's lived to tell the story of what she has gone through and what many other rhino go through on a daily basis.
These are some of the shavings from a rhino's horn, just like the clippings from your fingernails. How can people believe this stuff can give them the power and strength of a rhinoceros?
Preposterous. Yet on the black market, rhino horn still fetches 3 times the price of gold.
Now beside her is the reality of a new generation and the hope that that little baby calf represents, that when we are faced with a crisis as big as rhino poaching is at the moment, we still have the hope that we can succeed, that we can live through this, that we can build a new generation of people who think differently, but also have a new generation of animals that have survived against what seem like insurmountable odds.
From a situation that looks so dire to come so much positivity gives us hope that we must continue to fight against the current rhino poaching crisis. With your help, and Helping Rhinos is working to do exactly that by securing the future for rhinos like Tandy and Colin and Tembi and protecting the habitat that they need to survive.
I'm not going to dwell too much on what's going on in the world of rhinos because I know most of you know that because that's why you're helping and been helping us to support rhinos. But just a few facts: we've lost in South Africa alone over 5,000 rhinos over the last 4 years. The actual population now, we've reached that tipping point where we're losing more rhinos, the more rhinos are being born, and the actual population is probably lower than the official numbers. If you look at the official numbers, we talk about there being 19 to 20,000 white rhino. It's estimated that the official numbers in Kruger is about between 6,000 and 7,000. If you go and talk to the section rangers in Kruger National Park, they'll tell you there's probably no more than 3,500. Sumatran rhinos, we talk about there being about 100 Sumatran rhinos. And by the way, 5 years ago, when I was doing talks like this, we were talking about there being 200 Sumatran rhinos. Now we talk about there being 100. The reality is there's probably about 30 to 40. So we need to have a realistic approach of what's going on. Anyone seen this picture in the news recently? This is a picture by Brent Sturton that's just won the Wildlife Photographer of the Year. Okay, so now I actually applaud the judging panel for Wildlife Photographer of the Year for the bravery of making something like this their overall winner. It really is going to help to get the message out there and keep the message out there. I get asked a lot about why rhinos, why elephants. We see a lot about rhinos and elephants. They're iconic species. They're not the only species being threatened at the level that they are, but they're the most iconic species that people engage with. And if we can't bring ourselves to stop, bring an end to this suffering for these iconic species, what hope do the less iconic species have? So it's very important that we treat these as a flagship species almost, that we're focusing on. And certainly, as you'll see in a minute, we'll look at Helping Rhinos. Again, we're called Helping Rhinos. Our focus is on areas where there are rhinos, but all wildlife is benefiting from the work that we're having. We've seen these images for far too long, and it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable that we keep seeing them year after year. We will lose over 1,000 rhinos again this year in South Africa alone. So, this picture is of Tandy and actually little Tenby, but I think it kind of sums up where we're at. Here we've got Tandy with a hole in her face where the horn used to be, and next to her is little Tenby that gives us the hope. And it's that hope that I think we need to look at. Okay? There is hope going forward. There's lots of doom and gloom, and we've seen lots of doom and gloom, but there is hope going forward. And for me, it's that hope and that belief that we have to really pick up and we have to continue to work on. From our perspective, I think conservation needs to evolve and it needs to change. There are horror stories and we read them all the time. As a classic example, and please all of you bear this in mind, you'll hear from Richard about Olpeggiatur at the moment. Many people have heard of Olpeggiatur because they're home to the last 3 northern white rhinos in the world. How many people knew that they're home to the last 3 northern white rhinos? Okay. How many people also knew that Olpeggiatur also has the biggest population of black rhinos in East Africa and one of the most successful breeding programs? Far less hands than the first time. Okay? We have to look at what's successful, what's working, why is it working, and how do we replicate that, and how do we roll that out going forward. We have to start looking at how we build conservation as a sustainable model. Okay, we talk about conservation, we talk about environmental models, and people think about handouts and donations, and we rely on that so much. But actually, that's not sustainable in the long term. We have to build sustainable business models that funds conservation and makes us start looking after the planet and the wildlife. We have to start looking at things in a different way, looking at local communities. How do we engage local communities so that they actually feel that they have a part to play and they're benefiting from having wildlife? Rather than just, I've heard a number of times, yeah, we're engaging local communities, we're employing them for do X number of jobs, which when you actually drill down can be changing the beds or cleaning the toilets. That's not engaging local communities. It's getting them to really have an input and something to benefit from here. So, I put up here our Rescue, Protect, Educate. These are our 3 banners that we focus on. I'm not going to go into that in any more detail. That's kind of our strategy when we're looking at who we support and who we work. We're looking at projects that are out in the field that we can support, that we believe will make a difference. Here's just some of them, and we're going to talk about 3 in particular at the moment, but I did just want to mention our particular education projects. We just rolled out in the UK a couple of education books that has been phenomenally successful in terms of getting into schools. And in the US, Helping Rhinos now has a registered branch in the US, and we have just rolled out a curriculum that's going into schools. How many people know about China and Vietnam being the biggest users of rhino horn? Okay, how many people knew that USA is probably the 3rd biggest user of rhino horn? Okay, there's a massive Asian population. There's no official numbers, but it's a best guess estimate for the USA. So we're targeting the Asian communities in the US within the schools with messages that goes into the curriculum and whole programs. So that education piece is really important. People often ask, why did I set up Helping Rhinos and why was it different? And it was because we really wanted to focus on the education as well as the fundraising of the piece. But I'm going to now just play you 3 quick videos that let you hear from some of those projects. Our Zululand Rhino Orphanage, which is our orphanage partner in South Africa. The Black Mambas, which is the first all-female anti-poaching unit. And then a little bit from Olpeggiatur, and then I'll ask Richard to come up and just say a few words on there. So here is the Zululand Rhino Orphanage.
I'm here at the Zululand Rhino Orphanage, one of our partners in South Africa. This is Mkosi, and as well as Mkosi, there's 4 other rhino orphans here. Mkosi is a white rhino, and there are 2 other white rhinos, as well as 2 black rhinos. South Africa is experiencing its worst poaching crisis in its history. And without facilities like this to care for little orphans who have lost their mums, either through poaching, like Ntutu who's behind me, or like Mkosi here, who fell victim to the drought conditions in South Africa, they wouldn't have had a chance of survival.
Poaching in South Africa is hit a point where we're in an absolute crisis, and due to huge numbers of poaching, we're losing our rhinos, black and white rhinos, and saving the little ones it's extremely important because they're part of a viable population. We're losing so many adults that we need to save every last animal that we can. The orphans that come to the Zululand Rhino Orphanage, the end goal is to release them back into the wild. Rhinos are quite, especially white rhinos, it's quite easy to release them back into the wild. When we get a new orphan in, it's a very traumatic experience. These animals have come from a compromised situation. They're often very nervous, very stressed. So what we do is we take them in and we block all their senses. So we block their ears, we cover their eyes. We'll comfort them by sitting next to them, talking to them so that they feel the warmth of another creature, even though we are human and they are rhino.
With us losing so many rhinos per year, it's critical that we save every single one of them and give the species a chance of a future. Thanks to your support, Helping Rhinos has been able to help with building this facility.
It is of utmost importance to work with organisations like Helping Rhinos. Something like this could never be done without the support of international organisations. We do not have the funds to put a place like this together. We were able to establish this only because of funds that came in from Helping Rhinos, and now we're at a point where we can actually even take in another orphan if needs be.
You can still help by supporting us, and you can even go and adopt Mkosi here and help feed her milk and give her that chance of a future. Visit helpingrhinos.org and help them get back into the wild where they belong.
So the importance of somewhere like the Zululand Rhino Orphanage is simply because you may know, some of you may have heard about the Tula Rhino Orphanage, which was attacked by poachers in February. They killed 2 of the rhinos, beat up the staff, held the staff hostage, and the decision was made not to close that facility. The rhinos from Tula were moved to the Zululand Rhino Orphanage. It had to be set up very quickly. Within 3 months, we had 3 ICU units, we had 2 bomas, we got a pre-release boma for black rhinos, a pre-release boma for white rhinos. As you said in the film, I'm really proud of the fact that we helped fund some of that, because and we couldn't have done that without you guys and your support. But without that, those rhinos would have had nowhere else to go. And actually, within 2 weeks of making that film, it was already out of date because they have already taken in another little rhino called Kula. And he's very cute, I have to say. He came in at 2 years old, very thin. Actually, mum wasn't poached. His mum had a damaged udder and he couldn't feed. So I'm not going to show you that video now, but there's videos on our website and on our social media pages about that. So next is the black mamba. Some of you may have seen, I think Annika's here tonight. Hello Annika. Annika came out with a crew almost 2 years ago now, and we made a documentary on the black mambas. Now lots of people have seen that, so I didn't just want to show the same thing again. What we've got here is something we haven't shown before, which is an interview we've done with Craig Spencer, who set up and runs the black mambas. So you'll hear a little bit from him exactly on the importance and the success of that.
Black mambas are 36 young African women from the local tribes. They're 36 mothers, aunties, sisters, future grandmothers. They're the teachers in the communities, the role models in the communities, and they're the latest in defense against poaching, wildlife security. So the mambas will spend 50% of their time in the reserve as an early detection, crime prevention, Bobby's on the beat kind of role, visual policing, all of this sort of thing. And then back in the communities, they're developing this role model kind of ethos where we've got to criminalize snaring, bushmeat, killing rhinos and elephants and what have you. And that's what the mambas are doing in the communities. The black mambas complement the armed guard component. So I don't say you can ever do away with the armed guard component, but we do need to reduce our dependency on that inside the national parks, because we're just creating animosity. And we're creating orphans and widows in the communities. We're either locking the guys away or they might lose their lives inside the park, and that's creating animosity. So the mambas are doing the basic work. They're the public interface. They're marching up and down the fences every single day. They're seeing your footprints come in through the reserve. They're responding to the fence alarms, putting up camera traps all over the show and what have you. If they detect something, the armed guards, of course, will come in and back them up and assist them. The reality is we've lost more animals in these parks to snares, because a snare is an indiscriminate killing machine. Snaring was our single biggest problem here. The black mambas have switched off the snaring almost overnight, within the first few months of their deployment. So we're creating safe landscapes for the animals. I would say that's our single biggest success story. With the poaching on the rhinos as well, in the areas where the black mambas have been deployed, their detection rate of threats, tracks coming in, fences cut, this sort of thing, is almost 100%. And that gives the armed guards the upper hand. So yes, we've been successful. The black mamba concept should be rolled out. I don't believe that a park, a nature reserve, a national park, whatever it might be, anywhere in sub-Saharan Africa, can actually be resilient to the socio-political changes that are happening on the continent and so on, unless you have a black mamba component. You can call it whatever you like, but use the formula. The young women from the community, it's the single biggest resource in Africa that has been overlooked for centuries. Get those young women involved, give them a sense of pride and dignity, and let them take charge of a situation. The schools, we have to target the schools. Black mambas did that on their own accord. They went in and they've signed up 11 primary schools now, fixing them up over the school, painting them out and what have you. There's almost 900 children that the black mambas are influencing in those schools at any one time. The bush babies is that component. We stand out in the African sun, it's 42 degrees Celsius here, inside the classroom is 56. We've measured it. There's no windows, there's no doors, the ceiling has fallen down, there's no paint on the walls, a terrible learning environment, a terrible teaching environment. So the teachers have lost interest and the kids have lost interest. Very low occupancy rate in school. Okay, the kids are hungry when they arrive there and what have you. After the Bush Babies program intervened, classrooms have been decorated beautifully, there's fans on the walls and what have you. The kids are entertained and educated in a clean and healthy, stimulating environment. So the teachers have told us, when they come back to take over after the Bush Babies program has left, the kids are much more responsive and they've got a much higher occupancy rate in class, and the kids actually look forward to going to school, and the teachers look forward to teaching in that classroom. The highest achievers get brought into the reserve for a Bush Babies weekend safari, if you like. And that's last year it was 120 kids. We had to stagger it over a couple of months to bring in small groups at a time. And then the black mambas take them out on game drives, show them the elephants and so on. So, remember, environmental education is not just about this is a rhino and that's an elephant and please don't kill them and so on and so on. That you'll never win if that's your approach. You've got to get them to do water audits in their community and animal welfare with their cattle and their donkeys and their sheep and so on, and littering and planting trees and what have you. So, it's got to start at home first, and then we'll bring them into the park and show them what it could look like. And The Black Mamas and the Bush Babies and all the other programs that go along with that is only partly funded by the state. We get a small subsidy from the state, but that's only 30% of our budget. The rest of the budget has got to come from our partners. So we're desperate to form relationships like we have with Helping Rhinos. It raises our profile. Okay, Helping Rhinos has also taken Black Mambas from this bush environment into a first world city in London. You know, it was a huge eye-opener. First time ever on an aeroplane, first time seeing all of these amazing first world structures with all the history behind it, and so that they thought was really just fairy tales and storybooks. So, you know, if we want to become part of the global community and follow a global moral compass with norms and standards and so on, we have to have partners like we have with Helping Rhinos. I mean, we couldn't survive without it.
There's a couple of our projects, and we'll go in and now, you know, I'll ask Richard to come out now and just play a quick short film so you can get to see some of Ol Pejeta as well. But you know, you see there that what you'll hear from Richard in a moment, and what you see there is these are projects we're supporting that are having success. We can continue to grow in that, and that's the key for us going forward. So let me play this video so you get to see something of Ol Pejeta, and then Richard will tell you firsthand all about it. I'm Simon Jones, founder of Helping Rhinos, and this is Sudan, the last male northern white rhino in the world. He lives here at the Ol Pejeta Conservancy in Kenya, along with two females, Najin and Fatu. Also here at the Ol Pejeta Conservancy, you can find southern white rhinos and the largest population of black rhinos in East Africa. It's the only place in the world you can come and see northern white rhinos, southern white rhinos, and black rhinos. We're working in partnership with Ol Pejeta to conserve their rhino population and help the species grow from a population of just over 5,000 today.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks very much for having me here, Simon. What I must say before I start, actually, is leave aside Ol Pejeta. The the work that Helping Rhinos is doing together with our other partners to support us is massively appreciated, and it really is meaningful. So all of you in this room, I think, have contributed either directly or through Helping Rhinos to the rhino work on Olpejeta, and for that we are really very grateful. So thank you very much indeed. What I thought I'd do this evening is not really talk too much or for too long. For those of you who don't know Olpejeta, as Simon has said, we're the biggest black rhino sanctuary in Eastern Africa. We're a key one population. What that means is we are a population with over 100 individuals, of which there are only 9 in the entire continent of Africa. So we're very significant. I think the challenge, as we all know, is poaching. From a Kenya perspective, there are probably somewhere in the region of just short of 700 black rhinos left. That number has grown over the past 10 or 15 years, but it's heavily threatened by poaching. Probably the biggest threat to rhino conservation across Africa, but particularly in East Africa, is actually not poaching. Kenya has controlled poaching pretty well thus far, but it's much more the lack of available secured habitat into which expanding successful populations of rhinos can move. If you allow rhinos to exceed their carrying capacity across a certain area, what happens is the rate of population growth starts to diminish and may even be reversed. And that actually is a much more sort of insidious threat to rhino conservation. And the reason there is a lack of secured habitat is because nobody wants to have rhinos because they're too much of a risk, they're too dangerous to have, and they're too costly to look after. So the challenge for us is finding the money to pay for expansion, to find more habitat into which our population can move. And we are currently in the process of trying to achieve that with another 37,000 acres of land approximately. Olpejeta is around about 90,000 acres of land. So we're looking to secure another 37,000 acres over the next 1 to 2 to possibly 3 years. That's going to cost us somewhere in the region of $4.5 to $5 million to secure it. Then it's going to cost us another $300,000 or $400,000 per year to operationalize it in a way that can guarantee the security of rhinos. So the challenges are huge, but nevertheless we're making good progress. And I would say that with the help of the likes of Helping Rhinos, we are beginning to, I wouldn't quite say turn the tide from a rhino conservation perspective in Kenya, but certainly we're holding a line. And I think that line needs to be held at this point, where demand for rhino horn is so huge in places like Vietnam, in the hope that that demand eventually begins to diminish and we can begin to make progress to grow populations. I thought the other thing I would do is just give you a bit of an update on the Northern White Rhino program. That is, that's an interesting discussion from many different perspectives. There are many people who say that we're wasting our time. I think they, frankly, have a bit of a point. 99% of all the species that ever existed on planet Earth have gone extinct. That's the fact if you think about dinosaurs, etc. So why are we spending this time and effort to try to save that species over there? Which some people, by the way, argue is not a species at all, it's a subspecies. And the answers are actually many. But I think that the primary, or at least the best answer is that if we are ever to see rhinos again in Central Africa, and here I'm talking about places like the Central African Republic or the Democratic Republic of the Congo or whatever, and I'm talking 50 years hence, we have to somehow preserve some part of the genotype which comprises the Northern White Rhino. Otherwise it won't be possible ever to have rhinos in those places again. And rhinos are an umbrella species. What that means is where you have rhinos and you're preserving habitat and securing habitat to keep those rhinos, you are at the same time preserving and maintaining many other species which sit underneath that iconic species. So for me that's the importance, but I think there's a deeper philosophical reason, which is that I don't think we as humans have the right to allow these species, whatever they may be they rhinos or insects or whatever, to go extinct on our watch. The rate of extinction right now is the fastest it's ever been, faster than the rate at which dinosaurs went extinct. And that's all to do with human activity. It's nothing more and nothing less. So until such time as we change the way we interact with our planet, and until such time as we're able to change the way we consume, this is going to continue. And from a personal perspective, I feel the time to draw a line in the sand has come. So with regard to the actual recovery of that species, we're currently faced with a situation where we only have 3 left. One is an old male by the name of Sudan. You saw him on the film. He is 43 years old, makes him about 100 and something if he's a human. So he's old, and he's going to die soon, and he's infertile, and he certainly is not capable of breeding. That doesn't matter too much. Us males don't matter too much. There's plenty of stored semen around the place. And what is much more important is the fact that the 2 females are also infertile. But they are the last single repository of northern white rhinoceros eggs left on the planet. And at the moment, there is no way of preserving their eggs should they die. Okay? So if they were to die, then our chances of using the artificial reproductive techniques that are going to be necessary to recover this species would be lost. And that technique that I'm referring to is in vitro fertilization. So that's removing eggs from the females when we have the technology and protocol to mature those eggs successfully and create embryos using stored northern white rhino semen from around the world. So keeping them alive is clearly an imperative for us. In terms of developing the protocols that will be necessary, there is a consortium of people across Europe and in South Africa who are working with zoo-bred and held animals to develop IVF, to develop the techniques to remove eggs and create embryos in vitro. They have so far been successful at removing eggs. They have yet to be successful at maturing the embryos to the point of becoming a blastocyst, which allows those embryos to be successfully frozen. That said, we had a meeting about a week ago, and they reckon that they are on the point of being able to do that. These are with southern white animals based in zoos, whereupon they will then be able to come and start to take eggs from the northern white females and storing their embryos. Once that is done, we have to do it multiple times, and then we have to develop the protocol and technique that it would be required to get those embryos into southern white surrogate females to create eventually purebred northern white rhino calves on the ground. And once that is done, obviously one northern white rhino calf is not enough. We have to do it multiple times again to eventually create a founder population which could be bred against different lines to eventually allow repatriation of a founder population to the central African habitat from where they came. So we've got a long way to go. The estimated total cost is about $10 million. That probably needs to be raised over the next 5 to 10 years to make it happen. So there's progress. It's quite good progress, in fact, but we've got a long way to go before that species or subspecies genotype is fully recovered. So that's just an update on the northern white rhinos. So let me finish by saying again, Simon, thank you very much. And to all of you for all the work you've done. We on Old Peggotty are really appreciative. Any help we can get is massively welcome, is required, and please keep up your efforts, and we'll keep up our efforts to continue growing rhino populations. Thank you.
Okay, Richard, thank you very much. Thank you again for coming this evening. I talked about investing in success, and I don't think anything demonstrates investing in success more than the fact that in Old Peggotty our biggest focus is trying to find new lands to put the rhinos on rather than talking about poaching. I'm going to talk about just a couple of dates for the diary, but before I do that, let me just again thank you all for coming this evening. I promised my team I wouldn't talk for more than 10 minutes. I guess that was the most unlikely thing that was ever going to happen this evening. Before you go, a couple of dates. Some of you ran, oh no, sorry, wrong order. Anyone come to our event in March last year? A few people. This year, it seems like last year, like a lifetime ago. That was actually an event in partnership with Richard and with Old Hedgeter, and it was such a success that we are repeating it again next year. So date for your diary, it's the 15th of March. We've called it Shades of Grey in the world of the black and white rhinos. Yeah, you can imagine why we've called it Shades of Grey. We've got a different venue, we've got a bigger capacity than last year, so tell your friends. Tickets will be on sale before Christmas, so another perfect Christmas present to give alongside your Rhino tears. It will be in London, it's just at the back of Westminster. Some of you ran, I think, the half marathon, the Royal Parks half marathon. Anyone who didn't? Just recovered. We have, I think, 6 places at least in next year. So get training, let us know, sign up, and we'll give you a bright orange Helping Rhinos jersey so that you stand out and you help spreading the message as well as raising funds. But as I said, thank you once again for your support. I hope that, despite me going on longer than I was supposed to, that you've got a bit of a feel for how the funds that you've helped us raise is making a difference in the field. You've seen some of those projects. Tonight isn't a fundraising event, but I hope it inspires you to want to continue to work with us and continue to support us as we go forward. Please enjoy the drinks, enjoy the hospitality of Cornflake, and do go and see Sarah. Thank you very much.